Welcome to this online workshop on safe routes to school from the California Active Communities, California Project Lean, and the California School Boards Association. This workshop provides valuable information for parents and members of the community wishing to create safe routes for children to walk, bike, or roll to school. It's also a valuable resource for education professionals and advocates who are looking to build support for these efforts within their local school or school district. We have three panelists with us today who have significant backgrounds in this area. Lisa Cirill is Chief of California Active Communities within the California Department of Public Health. She oversees numerous statewide programs, including the California Safe Routes to School Technical Assistance Resource Center. Much of her work is centered on increasing physical activity and promoting active living for Californians of all ages and abilities. Our second panelist is Ted Link-Oberstar, who joins us today as a Safe Routes to School parent advocate from the Natomas Unified School District in the Sacramento area. Ted's passion, knowledge, and perseverance were instrumental in the initiation and implementation of the nationally recognized Natomas Safe Routes to School program. And we're also delighted to have Melissa Minas, the Safe Routes to School project manager at the Chula Vista Elementary School District in San Diego. Melissa's Safe Routes to School programs reach 17 elementary schools and more than 8,000 students. Lisa, let me start with you. Let's go with the basics. What is Safe Routes to Schools?
Well, the basic intent, Jim, is to engage and enable children to walk safely to and from school. And we want to make sure that their families can be a part of that as well, and the entire community. So we're really looking at decreasing injuries around school environments and making sure that we also decrease traffic congestion, fuel consumption, and also air pollution around schools. We're particularly interested in that because, as you know, we want kids to walk more for good health. We want to decrease the obesity and diabetes epidemics we have and other chronic illnesses. And so increasing physical activity is key for our children to live healthy lifestyles. It also helps our kids academically. They are much better achievers academically if they're able to walk to school, they're ready to learn, and they're a lot more rested actually when they get to class, and they're not so restless to begin school.
Give me a little brief history of the program. How did it begin? What was the idea, the intent in the very beginning?
Well, you know, interestingly enough, it came out of public health. And we're very proud of that, as I work for the California Department of Public Health. So what happened is about probably 12 years ago, we started seeing the need for injury prevention and physical activity promotion to work together so that we could create safe places for people to be active, incidental activity every day. And what we did was we gave out a few grants to some counties, and we got money from the Office of Traffic Safety. And we were able to actually get some communities to look at decreasing pedestrian injury and fatality. And from that, we were able to fund Marin County. And they wanted to look specifically at childhood pedestrian injuries. And what they did was they crafted a very robust program, and actually was the foundation for the Safe Routes to School program, the Safe Routes to School movement in California, and now the national program. Which has been incredibly successful. We now have our monies. We have federal monies coming for Safe Routes to School, as well as state monies. We've had state monies for 5 years prior to the federal monies. And what that allows Caltrans, the Department of Transportation, is to give communities monies to work on environmental and policy change around the schools. To make sure kids can walk more.
Very good. Ted, let's talk about some specifics. Sure. Ted, let's talk about your experience within the Natomas Unified School District. Give us a little idea of what you got involved with and how that sort of progressed.
Sure. Safe Routes to School projects start in a variety of ways and for a variety of reasons. Ours was really a community-generated project initially at one school. I've been a bicycle commuter for a long time. And there were really two motivations for starting Safe Routes to School. One was I would commute to work past our local elementary school and felt like I was taking my life into my hands every day with all the traffic dropping off. And the other thing was that at the time I decided to start it, my daughter was just starting kindergarten. I wanted her to be be able to bicycle, and it just didn't feel safe to do that. So we started we were very heavy on encouragement sorts of activities initially. First event was a parade. We got about half the school out there. We were able to get some money and make some T-shirts. Parade to school one morning, about half the student body, and some local community members were there. Gradually moved on to some contests, encouraging kids to walk and bike. Frequent rider miles was one of the first contests we tried. Eventually we expanded to a month-long contest called Walktober, where classes got to compete against each other to see who could make the most walking trips to school. Gradually we built support from the key stakeholders, the superintendent and the school board, also community partners like our mayor and our city council member. And those contacts came in very, very handy. We eventually were able to write several successful grants, some Caltrans grants, as Lisa was talking about, for some infrastructure improvements, and also for a paid coordinator who is now responsible for supporting district-wide programs like we have at the one school. We've got programs in all of our elementary schools now. We're working on the middle school and the high school, also developing a strategic plan. So we're really making a lot of progress, and it's been about 8 years from the beginning to where we are now. So.
Wow, it sounds like a groundswell. So Melissa, let's talk about your position with the Chula Vista Elementary School situation in the San Diego area. Sounds like everybody got involved there. There was a groundswell. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger. Let's talk about your situation.
Well, in Chula Vista Elementary School District, we were very fortunate that several years ago we were awarded federal funding to promote Safe Routes to School. My role for the district is the coordinator for the Safe Routes to School program, and initially we focused on 2 specific schools to pilot the program, where we would then build a model for the rest of the district to follow, and the following year we expanded Safe Routes to School to 17 schools total. So every school has the program in its unique way, and as Ted was discussing, there's walk weeks, there's walk to school days, walk to school month. It takes its own shape, and it's really a fun activity which is full of a lot of encouragement, and that's why the program's been so successful. And the way the district supports it is by providing training as needed, providing collaboration with our local law enforcement, evaluating our programs, and most importantly, supporting the program at a district-wide level.
Now, Lisa, as Ted was saying earlier, there was a series of things that kind of went through before you kind of got it up and running. Are there things to consider when you're setting up a Safe Routes to School program? You know, is there a framework or a kind of a template that you would look at for making sure that things are progressing in the right way?
Yes, and we call that the 5 E's. So Safe Routes to School, the premise is you want to educate and engage. That's very important up front. So educate and encourage. And you can do that by a variety of ways. We have bike rodeos and pedestrian rodeos where we teach children how to be proper and safe pedestrians. We also encourage children and their families to participate in activities that support walking behavior. We can give them pedometers for pedometer challenges, or we have a Golden Sneakers Award where the kids, you know, they walk so many miles and they get a pedometer, and that's terrific. And then we get into actual enforcement. So you want to have education and encouragement in place first, and then you look at the surroundings of the school and start to think, okay, are we able to really support a long-term walking program and get kids to school safely? So we go to our law enforcement or our traffic crossing guards and others and make sure that they're in place to support the work. And then we look into engineering. And engineering is really looking at how the streetscape, and how that allows children to safely cross streets and get to school and the routes to school. So there's a lot of infrastructure changes that might be necessary to get kids safely to school. Putting in a crosswalk, that could just be paint, very low cost. But you might need to put sidewalks in. A lot of schools don't have sidewalks in their neighborhood. And then of course we want to evaluate the work that we do. Bringing all of the community together is crucial. Ted alluded to it as well as Melissa. But we want to make sure that our traffic engineers and our land use planners, our law enforcement, fire departments, city councils, you bring your city council member in. If there is a community that needs some infrastructure changes and it's not happening, you take that city councilman out for a walk with the kids and you do a little walk audit of the surrounding area and see what's working and what's not. And I can tell you, you'll see some changes done very quickly.
Now, you mentioned education is a big part of this, so planning is important. Melissa, let me ask this then. When you're looking at a strategy in this line, what would an educational strategy be?
Well, in Chula Vista, what we did was we focused a lot on personal safety, pedestrian safety. We brought our law enforcement, the Chula Vista Police Department, in to conduct assemblies, deliver the message about walking safely to school. We also have a penguin mascot. Actually, the mascot was an idea that was designed and conceptualized by our students in our school district. And this mascot really promotes safe routes to school, and it really encourages kids to walk to school. And teachers and parents and principals have indicated that there's more participation because of the familiarity of the penguin mascot and kids wanting to walk to school.
Wow, I like the penguin. That's a nice thing. And you talked about engineering, so let's talk with Ted, because he's been involved from the start in his district. An engineering strategy, how would you define that in light of what we were just talking about with the educational strategy?
Sure. Well, as was alluded to already, oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes you start with the education and encouragement types of things, because those are sometimes the easier things to get going right away. Oftentimes engineering takes a little bit longer because you're talking about physical changes. You have to work with a lot of different agencies. You have to work with your local public works department, that kind of thing, which we did. Actually, just 8 years into our project, or almost 9 years into our project, we are making some major. We've made some infrastructure changes. We're making some major ones just this coming year. A lot of the stuff that we've done is curb bulb outs, which, if you're familiar with those, at the corner, you build the curb sort of out into the street. It shortens the crossing distance, and also makes it so pedestrians, particularly kids, are out, beyond the parked cars, so they're more visible and easier for motorists to see. Improve safety that way. Also, improved crossings, crosswalks, and vertical curbs. We have a lot of rolled curbs in Natomas, and the danger there is that the cars roll up onto the curb and make it encroach on the pedestrian space. So we're converting a lot of those out around our schools. But what's most important about what we did is not just what we are building, but how we went about the process. We didn't just talk to the city engineers, and we didn't just talk to the professional people. Lisa mentioned walk audits, and what a walk audit involves is bringing together the community members, bringing together the parents, the students, the teachers, the neighbors from around, taking them for a walk around the neighborhood. And it's a particularly designed process to help those folks tell you. They're the ones who know where the problem areas is. They're the ones who are literally on the ground. So they can tell you where the real obstacles to making a safe pedestrian and bicycle environment. While it's important to focus on the high-profile projects, the bigger things, you don't want to lose track of the simple stuff that can be done very quickly. You can do a lot with cones and paint, blocking off a driveway to keep cars from getting into an area where they're going to be a threat to pedestrians. It can also improve traffic flow. You can prevent left turns when you want to keep separating pedestrians and vehicles. So there's lots of stuff that you can do very quickly and very easily, and that also allows your community to know that you are moving forward with things, because by the time you get from planning a major infrastructure project to building it 5 or 6 years later, you have a lot of different parents and a lot of different students than you had the first time around. So it's important to keep things going with the smaller stuff.
Now, Lisa mentioned one thing earlier, and that was talking about state funding and federal funding. These are tough times for many school districts throughout the state and across the country. So let's talk about your area specifically, and anybody can jump in here. How do you mitigate those factors or navigate through those challenges when you're looking to either expand, begin, or continue a Safe Routes to School program?
Well, we've tried a couple of innovative strategies. One thing that we did in California, we were just talking about infrastructure. In California, school districts are able to put infrastructure bonds on the ballot for voter approval to build new schools, to improve existing facilities. And what we were able to do, largely because we had a good relationship, a lot of buy-in from the superintendent, the school district leadership. When Natomas a few years ago put a bond on the ballot, we were able to propose to them to include specific improvements for safe walking routes as one of the items that this funding could be used for. So when that bond passed, we then had a new source of revenue that we could use for those specific things. The one downside of an infrastructure bond is you can't use that for programmatic things. It has to be for physical stuff that's going to, remain around in place for a number of years.
And Melissa, what about within the Chula Vista district?
Well, in the Chula Vista district, parents play an integral role in sustaining the programs. I mentioned the 17 schools participating in Safe Routes to School. We have task forces set up at each school site, which comprise of community members, parents, sometimes staff, and even students. And because they design and plan projects going forward, there's really funding isn't necessary for that component. However, we do have some wonderful news for San Diego that the San Diego Health and Human Services Agency was recently awarded funding through the Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant. So Chula Vista is going to compete for funding that will promote capacity building or encouragement, engineering, and enforcement programs in San Diego.
I think, I wanted to add, because Ted had touched on that earlier. So there are the bond measures you can do in the parcel taxes, but also California Department of Transportation, they oversee the Safe Routes to School program, but there's also complementary funding mechanisms there, from the environmental justice grants to community-based planning grants and some others that can assist people to be an attractive candidate to get a Safe Routes to School grant.
So you have to be creative in your approach and making sure that people know about the needs, directions, wants of your community and your schools.
Yeah, and a lot of philanthropic organizations are starting to support this kind of work, and healthcare organizations as well.
Okay. I want to before we close, I want to do some final thoughts on basically how you look at the program, on what the school districts, the school board members, this partnership, I guess we could call it, can do to promote the Safe Routes to School. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in Chula Vista, one reason why we feel we've been so successful is because of the partnerships. We have a great partnership with our regional walking advocacy group, Walk San Diego, our local law enforcement, as I indicated. But really, the parents and the community are what drive the program, and to get their buy-in firsthand will really, spread very quickly and make the program successful. One tip for school districts that want to consider doing this, spreading it district-wide, is just be prepared to recognize that the program won't work the same in each school. Each one is going to be unique, and that encouraging kids to walk to school is a process, and in the long run, all the positive results will be evident.
Ted?
Well, my thoughts are that when you're trying to do something, don't worry about doing everything at once. Eventually you want to get to doing all the 5 E's, but start small and work from there. And also don't let a lack of funding intimidate you. There's, as I said, a lot of small things that you can do, and you can work and build it up to something big. As I said, we started 9 years ago in one school, and today we have a district-wide program. So
it works. And Lisa, you've talked about several things, and you've talked about the input from school districts and things that people should be looking for. Final thoughts from you?
Yes, well, a few things. I think first of all, you want to make sure you get involved in a simple event, a kickoff event like Walk to School. They've both done that.
Yeah.
That really serves as the impetus for getting your community stakeholders together and getting interest around a longer year-round program for Safe Routes to School. So that's crucial, and that, as I said, brings in the 5 E's, so you get your feet wet early on. And I think finding some local champions, keeping the momentum going, understanding that even if you don't get the grants, that there's still a lot you can do for low cost or no cost. And starting to engage your underserved communities who really need some of these programs the most. And that's what we're going to be doing with Caltrans, the California Department of Public Health. We will be assisting communities who are interested in this kind of work and hopefully support it for many, many years to come.
I like your idea of reaching out to those people that you might not think of, bicycle groups and parent groups, and being inclusive. Sounds like it
Exactly.
pays off when you bring everybody into the discussion. Yes.
Yeah, well, just one other thought I had is that, you know, sometimes an opportunity comes along that really seems like a downer or a negative, and you can turn it into a positive. And in the the economic times that we've had, the Natoma School District lost our busing. We had to lay off pretty much all of our bus drivers, which in one sense got a lot more people driving than had been, which made the situation worse. But what it did is it raised the school district and the community's sense of the need, and Safe Routes to School has been a benefit and has been a part of the solution to that. Raising people's awareness of the need to get kids walking and biking. So we've been able to turn a negative into a positive just by being able to look in that. And so that's one thing I would always encourage people to do, is to focus on those kind of opportunities.
Very good. Thanks. Great final thought. Thanks very much. I'd like to thank our panelists for their insight on Safe Routes to School, and please refer to the following links for more information and resources about Safe Routes to School. Thanks for being with us.